Hey everybody, my name is Anna Everhart and I am a co-founder here at Yes Ma'am Designs. We are a duo of two women who love everything design and design systems. Today I'm going to talk to you about design system foundations and why we do them, the fundamentals, bringing you back to primitives and semantics, and how this can accelerate your team. And just a little bit about myself. I'm a product designer at Acryl. I'm helping build the platform called Data Hub. I work on the design system there as well as working on features and user research, etc. I want to talk about why we use primitives and semantics, so I'm going to start with primitives. Think of primitives as our very basic fundamentals. So they're going to be raw hex codes in a ramp, 0 to 100, 0 to 1,000, or whatever your team uses. And then you have your spacing, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, or whatever scale you use. Even your typography primitives. So that's going to be like your font family, your line spacing, your text size. And then what semantics are going to be fed from your primitives. So think about a design system. For example, I have an error text and I want that error text to be a certain color red. So I've established my reds from a brand perspective. They're in my design system as primitives. And my semantics will be referencing back to those primitives. So my error text is going to be red 300. My success text is going to be green 500. Obviously, you follow accessibility standards when you're building these things. But what that does is it allows for your team to be consistent in their designs and scale quickly. Not just to your designers, but this is so important for developers because what happens is when they don't have semantics established, developers have raw hex codes all throughout their code. And it makes it very difficult to do things like theming, which is light mode, dark mode, or use different brands. So primitives and semantics are truly at the base of our design system. They are the fundamentals that you need to establish as a designer to set your team up for success. Now I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay, here we have Figma, which is our tool. I want to emphasize the fact that your tool is just a way to get the job done. This is a foundation, regardless of tool, that needs to be carried through your designs and development. Figma has something called variables. If you haven't been familiar with variables, I'm not going to give you a crash course. Go watch a video. Figma has a million on it. I'll make another video if you really want one. But there's also a plugin called Token Studio you can use. There's a fantastic designer. Her name is Sam I Am, who can help you if you have any questions on Token Studio. They do very similar things. Token Studio is a little bit more robust and flexible, but because it's a plugin, most people tend to use things that are ingratiated into their tool. I use Figma's variables. Variables are just another way of saying tokens. You're establishing a design token or a token that your developers can use and consume in code. As you can see on this Figma page, I have my primitives and my semantics. This is what I was talking about, whereas your primitives are your raw hex codes named something like gray 100 to gray 700. And then your semantics are background, surface, text primary, text secondary. Now, if we look at our actual semantics, they're just going to be referencing back from a primitive. And I'm going to show you that. So I'm going to open variables. And as you can see here, I have my primitives. This is my gray 1 through 700, which are bound here. As you can see, gray 300. I want to make a note that in designs, I know I talked about this before, but I do not use primitives in designs. Matter of fact, I take my primitives as the design system designer and I remove all color scoping. They should never show up for a designer. What that means is if I'm a designer, I'm going to turn them back on just for the sake of this. I don't want them to use primitives. So I can see here my grays, all of my grays, 1 through 700, and I can also see my semantics. A designer can make the mistake of using gray 100, 300 as their background, but if you force them and disable the primitives from showing, they're always going to use the right background color. Again, this leads to consistency throughout your applications. So I'm going to turn them off. and you should no longer see them in the fill area. So now all I have are those semantics. So I'm going to make this background. Now I'm going to open variables back up again. And I'm going to show you that semantics are just bound to those primitives. So again, this is gray 200 as a background. As you can see in my primitives, I have established gray 200. Again, this allows you to really be flexible with brands or theming or, light mode, dark mode, etc. And setting this up this way allows for your developers to also build that in as well. We're not just thinking about our design team and what's easiest for us. We're thinking about our developers and how we can set them up for success, because not everybody knows that our background is going to be gray 200 all the time. If you just use those gray 200s in your designs, you're going to have mismatches places and your developers are going to be confused. So this leads to less confusion, more consistent designs. That's all we want, right? And quicker development, because your developer knows to use background every single time. It's going to be much faster for them. We have this little frame here. This is now named background. And I'm just going to make this our background. Say this is our page. I want to build some text into our page. Text header, text subheader. Oh no, both of my texts are black. Oh no. Great. I know that my headers in every single design, or my text primary, should always be this text primary. And now I know as a designer, my text secondary should always be text secondary. So you have text styles, right? Your typography styles, if you will. You have your fonts, you have your weights, you have your sizing. When you're building out a style, all you're doing is building out a semantic. You're saying for every header, I want it to be 24 pixels, regular or medium, and I want it to be enter. Now, what you can do is, instead of using that as a style, just as a style, you can bind your styles to your variables. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, now we are going to make our typography primitives. You can do it in this primitives collection that you've already created. You can make another collection called typography where you put the primitives. It's completely up to you. To note though, when you are designing and brand switching, it might be easier and less error prone if you put them all in one primitives page. And it has your typography, your color, your spacing, all those primitives in one. Or you can break out new collections and do them again, typography, spacing, colors, etc. It's completely up to you and your team and how you want to build. For the sake of this demo, I'm just going to put them in here. So I am going to make a string variable for our font family, and I'm going to make it SF mono. I'm going to make another variable, and I'm going to make some sizing variables. So I can name this, let's say, font size extra small, or I could just write extra small. Again, depends on if you break this up into groups. If you don't break this up into groups, you cannot use extra small again. So for the sake of this, I'll just say font size extra small, and we'll make this 12 pixels. I'm going to make another one, font size small, 16 pixels. I'm only making 3 so you can see, but obviously your system will be more robust. Font size medium, 24. And then let's do one more for weight. So I am going to put in weight. Now one thing to note about weight is they can either be numbers or they can be strings. Look at your font that you're using and see whether or not they use weights, and you have more flexibility with variable fonts where you can use weight numbers, or you have to use text, which would be like your regular, medium, semi-bold, bold, etc. I'm going to say semi-bold, and then weight. I'm going to name this weight. And then I'm just going to duplicate this, weight, bold, bold. Now, these are our primitives. Great, now we have our primitives established. Now we're going to make our semantic, and what we're going to do is bind every single primitive variable that we just made, or primitive token. Again, those words are interchangeable. Variable is just a Figma name. So here we have our text styles. We don't have any right now. Let's make one. So our font, we're going to attach it to a variable, which we know is SF Mono. As you can already see, the font has changed. We're going to make this header, right? Our header variable is going to be bold, and our header text size is going to be that 24 pixels. Now what we can do is add a style called header. Now, no matter what, your header will always be this style. It'll always have those variables attached to it. So if I go back and I change the variable to say enter, there we go. Our text switched to enter, and it's still our header style. I'm going to keep it back to SF Mono just so we can see a difference here. Now our text subheader, we're going to do the same thing, attach the SF Mono. We're going to say that for our subheaders, we always want it to be semi-bold, and the text size, we always want it to be small. We also know our text secondary, and you can make these names whatever you want. If you want to name them header, subheader, again, totally up to your team. Now we're going to create a style called subheader. You can use the description. Now, no matter what, we have our header, subheader. If we change this to enter again, it changes on both of them. We're going to go back to SF Mono. Now, the really cool part about this is, let's say we want to create a different brand. Cool. This is going to be brand 1. This is going to be brand 2. If we want to change our text semantics, or those styles, and have them reflect a different brand, we can do that in our primitives. So if I want the text to be enter, I want the font size medium to be 32, let's say 28 and 12. And let's say I want this to be bold and semi-bold, or bold and regular. I'm just trying to show some differences. What happens is if I drag and drop this, and I change this to brand 2, great. It changed to brand 2. I just want to clarify that this is part of a demo. I am just building on what I know. How you build is whatever you choose. If you only have one brand, if you only have light mode, dark mode, that's up to you. But what's important, and regardless of tool that you need to consider, is those primitives versus semantics, and ensuring that for your developers and your design team, those are distinguished and they're easy to consume. That's all I wanted to discuss today about primitives and semantics, and really getting back to those basics. Again, your tool doesn't matter. It just matters about how you're building, and building those fundamental building blocks to ensure that your team can move quickly and consistency, and you'll have way less time to build your product and more time to actually have fun and design your product. So thank you so much for being here today. If you have questions, reach out, add comments to the video. I'm so happy to help, and I want to help you guys learn. So thanks a lot. Bye.